Ben, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks for having this interview with us. I represent RugbyNation.com.
Yeah.
And I've been following Fiji and what you've done in England, and now moving to Fiji and what you're doing for that team. I think it's phenomenal.
Thank you very much.
I honestly think the game that you played against New Zealand in Dubai was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen.
Yeah, I hope it's not a once in a lifetime game. I hope we can reproduce that again.
Almost every single one of those tries was a highlight.
Yeah.
And it was as if New Zealand was standing still and Fiji was just going crazy. But something that I did notice was that you implemented, that you saw very well, was allowing the height of the Fijians to work in their favor. Would you mind expanding on that? Tell me a little bit more about the strategy.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, in a past team, with Fiji, they practiced kick-off scrums and line-outs the day before a tournament. That's all for 10 minutes. So you can see why perhaps their strike rates in those areas weren't as high as they should be.
Right.
And you go and watch the local tournaments. In England, I'd always be teaching the guys to try and catch with two hands or tap backs. And all the Fijian guys, I mean, it's a lot of volleyball type stuff. And in fact, although volleyball, they don't seem to play it internationally, it's in all the villages. It's volleyball and rugby. There's always a little pitch of rugby and a volleyball net. So they're very good at sort of spiking, docking the ball back. So I just thought, well, look, no point taking that out of the game. Let's just concentrate on trying to get the kick game a bit more accurate and practice it a little bit more, give him some really simple practices to improve that, and they were putting it on the money. And if it's anywhere near, they're athletic, their timing's great, and their proprioception, so their balance is so good. And it's a hunch, but I think it's more than that probably. When they're growing up, they're playing rugby on the field, and it's all barefoot, and it's very uneven. So their small muscles around their ankles and their proprioception is incredibly good from a young age. And I just think that they're very balanced. So when I'm seeing them running in training, they glide, and that comes from what they do as kids, and the type of rugby they play as well.
Yeah. What is it that made you decide to move and to do this move and become the head coach for Fiji?
A number of reasons, really. I think it was a two-parter. Felt in Moscow at the World Cup that it just felt like it was time to move on. I was getting a little bit frustrated, I guess, with some of the stuff that was happening, and publicly I've sort of said this, but I did feel as though I fell out of love a little bit with rugby. Not the boys coaching on the field, and the England boys were one of my highlights of coaching. But I just felt I needed a break, and I actually didn't think I would jump straight back into rugby. I was going to do something else in sport in the UK. But Fiji, we had a conversation and chucked the question across to my wife, and she said, "Okay, let's have a crack." So it's the one team I would have gone to. I couldn't see myself coaching another team except a team that I thought I could. I really respected the way they attacked. It was sort of my philosophy, with one or two subtle changes, and I felt I could add some value. And I've coached some Fijians that I've found to be incredibly humble and hard-working, and just felt like it was the right time to do something. So that's what happened. And a few months later, I'm on the sideline with a palm on my chest, coaching these guys.
I think that's fantastic. Switching gears a little bit, in South Africa.
Yeah.
How was it to be? I know South Africa won, and the way that they battled on the field, and how epic of a moment it was to win after Mandela's passing, especially knowing the history of South Africa and what Nelson Mandela did, and and beating Fiji, beating New Zealand and such. What was it like to be on the field?
Well, it was funny really, because the tournament is getting better and better in South Africa, and obviously we thought we were in with a good shout of winning the tournament, but were outplayed by Samoa in the quarterfinal and deservedly exited. And you just got that feeling that it was, around the whole area, there was going to be an impact here that South Africa we're going to prove to win this tournament. And the final, where you sit in the stand and you're normally reasonably neutral about things, and this is no disrespect to the New Zealanders, but there was just this sort of lovely feeling in the stadium that this was going to be South Africa's moment, and it was, I thought it was, bearing in mind all the things that had gone on in those previous few days. I was so pleased for the people in the stadium, the guys watching, and it summed up, in a small little way that, rugby helped unite the country back in '95 when they lifted the World Cup and Nelson Mandela was there, and it was a lovely way to round things off, I thought. And it's one of the times where, sometimes when a team wins a final, you sort of wish you were the team there, but you put your hand up and go, wow, that was a pretty special moment. I was glad I was on the side of the field watching it.
I wish I was on the bleachers watching. I was watching my TV and I couldn't get enough. And I had never seen South Africa hit so hard and play with so much passion. Now, in your coaching style, planning on the Olympics, working towards the Olympics, do you see that you have to do things a little bit differently? You have to maybe bring up a few of the younger players and get them some playing time before the Olympics. Is there some strategy behind that?
There is and there isn't, as far as the young players, because actually you bring up some of the 17 or 18-year-olds now, well, they're still going to be young in the Olympics, and you do need experience. And we've got a young side where I think only one of the players, PO, is over 30. The rest are all in their mid-20s or early 20s, so they're going to be hitting the peak at, come in 3 years' time. We have got an incredibly talented under-18 team that beat New Zealand secondary schools for the first time ever in the history of Fijian Rugby. 3 or 4 of those guys are potentially world class. So I've now got to fight hard to make sure they remain Fijian and don't get poached overseas and get contracts and then get residency and then get passports or the ability to play for the All Blacks or Australia or France. And this has happened. And the scouts in the islands are increasing. NRL scouts in Rugby League. The French scouts are there keenly. New Zealand have got a lot of provinces and clubs that will come over and they'll get hold of the boys. And already that team that beat New Zealand, half of those have already been given scholarships in New Zealand schools. And if they stay there, then we lose them. And, you sometimes send the guys on their way with a pat on their back if they go and pick up a really lucrative contract abroad, but you still want them to sort of don the national jumper in international games, and that's what you want ideally, and not to lose them. So that's what we're working hard on. We've got Youth Olympics in the summer, and we're representing Oceania for that. So pretty excited about. I'm coaching that team in Nanjing, and we've got some great players. Interestingly, if you look at our squad, half our players probably left school by the time they were 15 or 16. So our secondary school side is great. However, half the playing population under 18 weren't at school to be eligible for that team. So I got to hunt around these islands and watch these tournaments, and it's fascinating because there's some incredible talent that you literally, I'm not lying or over exaggerating, you can go to a field in the middle of nowhere and pick up the next world beater. That they exist because it is really the only sport that they aspire to play, and it's the nation's team, because all the sevens players come from domestic clubs. They're not abroad, and then we bring them in. So that they feel as though they almost it's their team. That's why the country goes to a standstill when the team are playing, and why bank holidays are made when we win tournaments, and thousands are at the airports when we win. Hundreds were there when we left, and it's pretty staggering. I doubt there's another country in the world that has a sport that is so fervently supported by the entire 800,000 population. I guess they see that as the one thing that Fiji can be the best in the world at, and they're very proud of it. So it's great.
And I know you're in a rush, but just briefly, your thoughts about Vegas, winning Vegas, and any thoughts on these next few days?
Yeah, I mean, the gods of rugby didn't exactly give us an easy draw. New Zealand, Australia, and Scotland is a terrifically hard. There's 1, 3, and 5 in the world, I think. They're all in the same group, so one of those is going to miss out. And 2 games a night on a narrow pitch makes it even harder. And I've seen upsets here before. I've got to say, the pitch doesn't suit us particularly. It's too narrow for us, and they lay the turf on the top of the Astro, which means it's just not as fast, particularly when you compare it with Wellington or Dubai. So it's not exactly the perfect pitch for Fiji. Saying that, these guys can create space in 10 metres. So we just, as I've told the boys, if you haven't got the width and the space out wide, then we'll have to create that width by playing with a bit more depth and allowing the ability to get our feet going by standing a little bit deeper, and that means we've got to hit the ball very hard all the time and always be in motion. So potentially it could be really exciting, because if we get our A game playing, and if you go back to that game against New Zealand, could have been on a 50-metre pitch, because we didn't require that much. We weren't stretching them. We were breaking them down the middle and through offloads, and their offloading skills are outstanding. And we don't want rucks. We've got the least amount of rucks in World Sevens per game and per tournament, and that's something that we work hard to do. We don't want ruck. We want continuous, fast-flowing rugby, and we need to sort our defence out as well. So they make their tackles. They've just got to be in the right places.
Final question: what does the heart of rugby mean to you?
Oh, I don't know. I owe rugby a lot, really. Not only has it given me a career that hopefully I look back with fondness and be very grateful for the people that you meet and the places that you go. I worked in lots of different sports, and rugby seems to unite a little bit more than we've still got that off-field camaraderie that perhaps one or two other sports haven't got, because we're still really a relatively new professional sport compared with some of the others. It provides me with memories that I'm not going to forget, and friends that I'll keep for life. And those things are probably a little bit more important than the day-to-day stuff and the winning and the losing.
You're right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
much. I sure
much.
appreciate it.